Hello and welcome back to the StarCityGames.com Open Series in Cincinnati. I am Nick Miller alongside Harry Corvese. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you.
Round 7 of the Standard Open. Harry's here playing the deck he wrote about.
Yep.
Putting his money where his mouth is.
Putting my green where my mouth is, that's for sure. I usually like the Sphinx's Revelation decks, the Supreme Verdict decks, but I just feel like, in particular with a faster format as a result of certain cards, Mana Confluence being one of them, Supreme Verdicts and Revelations, we're going to hold off for a week or two before we figure out how to attack the format from that angle, I think.
So you have your white-green, white-based aggro deck.
Yep.
Shifting toward white so you can utilize Brave the Elements.
Absolutely.
You got your one-drop suite of soldiers and dryads. Then, of course, you have voice, big elephants, lions, and Bremas.
Right.
Any ideas on switching the creature base, or how does it work for you today, or is it perfect?
It's been doing well so far. I've taken some suggestions about Experiment 1 into consideration, and I just really like the fact that this deck gets to rely pretty heavily on Brave the Elements in an environment that has a lot of mono-colored devotion in it. It's very strong against mono-black devotion, mono-red devotion, mono-blue devotion. It can come into play in the mono-white aggressive mirror matches, so Brave the Elements I think is pretty well positioned right now. I'm excited to be able to play it. As far as the voices and the smiters and the Fleecemane Lions are concerned, they have been the reason to play the deck so far. Being able to utilize these powerful gold 2-drops and 3-drops without putting any additional strain on your mana as a result of Mana Confluence has been a big game for sure.
Now that you have Mana Confluence, the green-white decks or the white-green decks, however you look at them, now don't have to worry about having the double mana that they can't cast in their hand.
Right, so exactly.
You get to play 3 Bremas, so you always get to play your Bremas.
Yep.
You know, and all your other gold creatures are just as good.
Yeah, I think gold 2-drops were a thing that people have been like. If you take a look at a card like Spike Jester, it's a very powerful card. The rate on that card is very good, and people struggle to find a way to use that, mostly as a result of difficulty with mana. I wouldn't say that the mana was bad. I know some people were saying that maybe we are relying a little bit too heavily on Mana Confluence, and we should just be sticking to streamlining our aggressive decks to one color or the other. But I think that the power of these gold 2-drops is something that needs to be explored.
Another journey into Nick's card. You have 4 Banishing Light.
I do. Yep.
How'd you come to the conclusion you just need all 4? Like, I figured 4 might be a little much when you're trying to get aggressive.
Well, it's a white-based aggro deck. We are not playing the red the way some of the other decks that are utilizing this creature base are. So there are times where we have difficulty removing problem creatures like Desecration Demon, and Boros Reckoner, and that's where something like Banishing Light can really shine. Initially, I was playing 4 Selesnya Charms and 3 Banishing Lights, and just from playing a little bit, Banishing Light was just spectacular every single time I drew it. So the ability to get an early aggressive curve with a white 1-drop, leading into some of those double-colored 2-drops we were talking about, and then punish your opponent for blocking with a card like Banishing Light has been very good. Also, just the random problem permanents that you would otherwise have to deal with, like an Underworld Connections or Thassa or something like that. Banishing Light has been very good at dealing with those as well.
Dealing with Thassa normally relied on the Selesnya Charm.
Right.
Of course, they had to have the devotion.
Right.
So
at which point you're already behind. It seems like if their devotion count is high enough where they're halting you with an active Thassa, just having that Selesnya Charm sometimes can be good enough if you time it right. But it's very nice to be able to handle that handle that turn 3 Thassa with a 3 mana cost card like Banishing Light, and still continue on with your aggressive plan.
Now, I know you promoted the white-green aggro deck, but one card I don't recall being in your list is this 2 of Dictate of Heliod.
So we were experimenting.
What is the 5 mana enchantment doing in this deck?
We were experimenting with some trump cards. Okay, we experimented with Dictate. We experimented with Godsend. We theorized with the small Ajani 3 mana Ajani. You're gonna have to help me with the name. Right, Caller of the Pride. And I really liked the Dictate in theory. It made my Mutavaults 4/4. It seemed, good against aggressive and mid-range mirror matches. And in truth, the best application that I found for it so far today has been just playtesting some games with Brian Brondoin. His deck, Jund Monsters, that has a lot of 5/5s and 4/4s, and takes a little bit of mana and time to get to them, can really get punished by a card like Dictative Hellion. But ultimately, I think that the 5 mana is a little bit too expensive for this deck, and I've been finding myself with it caught in my hand, and I've been finding myself boarding it out very frequently. So the Dictate, while it was a great thought, we're probably going to move on to something a little bit more streamlined as far as mana cost is concerned, like a small Ajani or something like that. Not Godsend, because Godsend is 6 mana still. But
Little Ajani seems to look great in this type of show.
Yeah, it really does. Just double strike and flying on a Loxodon Smiter is pretty big game. And when it comes out of nowhere, you just drop it on the table and they take 8. It can definitely be a game swinging play.
And a deck like this can actually utilize both parts of the Ajani,
right,
where the little creatures can get the benefit of the counters, and the big creatures.
Right. The deck has it's got 23 creatures that are just creatures. That's what they are. And then it's got 4 copies of Mutavault and 3 copies of Selesnya Charm, which do frequently. Selesnya Charm, the mode is frequently creature when we're not in a creature-on-creature battle where the pump would be better. And Mutavault has been very good as well. The ability to play 4 copies of Mutavault in the white-green aggressive deck is something that this color combination hasn't been able to do before, and I think is a big benefit and another point in Mana Confluence's direction.
And you have 3 Mana Confluence.
I do. I read an article yesterday by Tom Ross on Star City, and it put the fear in me a little bit, because I definitely did just jam 4 Mana Confluence into my deck and say to myself, hey, we're going to cast our gold 2-drops, we'll be good to go. But in the end, I cut one, I replaced it with the basic planes after I crunched some numbers, and that left us with, I believe it's 13 green sources that can cast our 15 green cards, and that seemed to play well enough for me, and so we went with the additional basic lands.
Not only do you get to play 4 Mutavault, but 9 basic lands, which is something this deck really wants to be able to do.
Right, we lean a little bit heavier in the white direction, obviously, because of cards like Soldier of the Pantheon and Brimaz, and also the ability to cast multiple white spells in a turn is very important when you're playing a card like Brave the Elements. So we're heavily skewed as far as our basic lands are concerned, 7 plains and 2 forests. I thought about 3 forests for a little bit, but then I just decided that I never ever wanted to draw 2 forests in a game, so I just stuck with the 2 and kept my green source count where it was.
Let's take a look at the sideboard.
Sure.
You've got 4 Unflinching Courage.
That card has been a house. That card has been the reason that I have defeated burn matchups, mid-range creature matchups. It's great against mono blue. It has just been very, very, very good across the board today. It was good against Naya Hexproof, even though I lost to Naya Hexproof in round 1 of this tournament. It was still very strong there, and it's been just very good. Having access to Armadillo Cloak is one of the best things that a green-white deck of this variety can do. Is it main deckable? Something's got to happen with these dictates, so it's either small Ajani, I think, or it's possible that it's Unflinching Courage.
Seems really good.
Yeah, Unflinching Courage, and in drawing it is so important in the matchups that you need it, that it's just an auto 4-of, in my opinion.
Yeah, when you bring the matchups, you bring Unflinching Courage in. When you draw it, it is so important.
Absolutely.
Like in these green-white aggro decks, the sideboards are usually important, but Unflinching Courage is usually the most important one you're bringing in.
Absolutely. I might play 5 copies if I had the opportunity to.
Of course, fighting.
I don't know that I'd play Gift of Orzhova, though. I think the trample and the +2/+2 is where we want to be.
Fighting mono blue, you have your Mistcutter Hydras.
Yep.
Do you ever bring it in against Control too?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it's the card that does double duty in both of those matchups. Any deck playing Sphinx's Revelation or Supreme Verdict is just very afraid of Mistcutter Hydra on a regular basis.
I've talked to some people, and their love affair with Mistcutter Hydra has started to wane a bit now that Banishing Light is here.
Yeah.
And the white and the blue decks that can answer it. So
it's definitely true that now your control decks do have access to a card like Banishing Light, and so they can time the use of or structure the use of their removal spells in such a way where they have Banishing Light available. I'm still going to bring this guy in. This guy's got haste. You can't counter him. He's going to crack for 7 or 8 if you cast him the right way. And if they banishing light him, okay, they banishing light him. But generally, I'm just going on an aggressive plan, dealing them large chunks of damage, and then that haste and uncounterability of the Mistcutter Hydra is still big game, I think.
Now, you mentioned you've got 2 Deicide.
Yep. So hexproof is obviously going to be a big thing, or at least a lot of people were talking about it going into this tournament. The addition of Mana Confluence makes the deck's mana much better, and so we really need to have our answers to that deck. Deicide does double duty along with Keen Apparition, which I assume
also Glare of Heresy.
Yeah, Glare of Heresy.
All the important white enchantments.
Exactly. But the Keen Apparitions and the 2 Keen Apparitions, 2 Deicide is 4 Naya Hexproof slots, and the split is as a result of the cards being a little bit better in some of the other fringe matchups. Like Keen Apparition, I'll find myself bringing in this time for the Dictate of Heliod, because that card has just not been that great against the mono-black matchups. And it's important to have the additional 2/2 body that can deal some consequential damage when you're trying to leave it in for Underworld Connections and things like that. It kills some cards in mono-black, but I wouldn't say bring in enchantment removal in that matchup if it wasn't attached to a creature. Just the fact that it's attached to this 2/2 body for 2 mana is very important in matchups like mono black. You can just, they don't have removal spell for all your guys. You're just beaten down with a 1-drop and a 2-drop, and that can be very important.
Lastly, these couple Giant Growths.
Yeah, so that was another concession to the Naya Hexproof deck. Giant Growth can just be just a stone cold blowout against Naya Hexproof. They ultimately do a lot of their creature combat math in the first main phase, so they can shoot up their guy and get in there and make your blocks not profitable. So a spell like Giant Growth, which produces an additional 3 toughness and 3 power for the low cost of 1 mana, can be a big blowout there.
A lot of that math revolving around, most people know of Selesnya Charm, so they're thinking about 2.
Exactly.
The actual one
they know of Selesnya Charm, and that would be 2 at 2 mana, which is just a significantly worse rate than the 3 at 1 mana that we get out of Giant Growth. Also, it's been very nice against the other creature matchups. White-black humans, I'm sure, doesn't like seeing Giant Growth across the table. Mono-red, when they're trying to throw damage-based removal at something like a Loxodon Smiter or something like a Fleece Mane Lion, definitely doesn't like to see Giant Growth either. So there are some spots where the Giant Growths have acted almost like additional copies of Brave the Elements that will generate more value, because you can use them to sort of lightning bolt your opponent at times.
All right. Well, you're doing great so far. Playing the deck you wrote about. Getting there with it. So I wish you the best of luck in the last 3 rounds.
Thank you very much.
For Harry Corvese, I'm Nick Miller here in the sideboard. Stay tuned for more action on StarCityGames.com.